Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United transfer news, and I apologise for being a little bit late, but you're going to get some big news tonight. This is hot off the press, but all I'm going to say is, first of all, I'm going to say more than this, but first of all, I just want to say that I'm absolutely exhausted with this transfer window, and I'm sure many of you feel the same, because it is absolutely relentless, and I dread to think what tomorrow and Thursday are going to be like, because it's relentless, absolutely relentless. We've got some pretty nailed on news coming out of Manchester United to talk about in a moment. But first of all, Eriksen, the deal still moves forward at this moment in time. Dybala is off and going to Spurs. That is the latest breaking news. This is coming from Di, who knows what Di is anymore. He used to be Mr. Credible, then he was not so credible, and now we think he's credible again. But then he's mentioned Bruno Fernandes, and we don't think that's happening anymore. He's come out and said that Juventus have accepted, more or less, a bid for Dybala for 70 million euros from Spurs. Now, this would be absolutely amazing if this happens, because this afternoon there was some talk that the Dybala deal could still happen, and then 5 minutes later, Fabrizio Romano, who works for Di, said the Dybala to Manchester United deal is definitely off. 3 hours later, he's potentially going to Spurs. I mean, Spurs, where's Daniel Levy been keeping all this money? But they want Bruno, they want Lo Celso, they want Dybala, they've already got Dembele. You know, Spurs are making moves. And Dybala to Spurs. Well, look, as many people have said, Dybala snubs United for Spurs, because the story over the weekend was that we were going to do this Lukaku for Dybala swap, but Dybala didn't quite fancy it, but now he quite fancies Spurs. I mean, the difference between United and Spurs is wafer thin. Spurs are in London, and London is arguably more appealing to people outside of England than Manchester. So what? Old Trafford, all right, Spurs is a better stadium than Old Trafford, but Old Trafford's got the history. And at the moment, we're in the Europa League, but Spurs are not really consistently in the Champions League, so I don't see a disparity. I don't really see a disparity. So it's a bit of a confusing one as to why Dybala would pick Spurs over Manchester United. But Spurs are also after... I mean, Spurs have become the new United in the last few days. They're after everybody, whereas we don't seem to be after anybody. So Dybala to Spurs is the latest news as we sit here now and try and understand what is going to go on. But the flip side of this is that the Eriksen story, which we've been talking about tentatively this morning on Transfer Daily, I was like, I don't believe it. Early afternoon, I was talking about it again. I said, well, there's more credible people talking about it, but I don't believe it. Tonight, there's even more talk about Manchester United being in for Christian Eriksen. These discussions have been going on for longer than this week, and that Spurs may well be pushing this deal. The obstruction is, like, James Cooper spoke about it on Sky Sports. I've spoken about it. Other people have spoken about it. I'm not talking about any credibility there. Many people are talking about it because it's true. How can you get a player out of Spurs in 2 days? Daniel Levy is notoriously hard to work with. But the flip side to that is it Spurs trying to sell Eriksen to us? Because if they're trying to sell Eriksen because they know he won't sign a new contract, that's 60 million walking out the door, like we had Herrera walking out the door for 30 million because he went for free. So maybe the Eriksen story to Manchester United can become a reality if it's Spurs pushing the deal, because they want to get money in. It's a weird one for Spurs, because you've got Eriksen who wants to go and they probably want to keep him. Do they keep him for a year and get nothing, or do they take 60 million now and put that 60 million towards a Bruno Fernandes or a Dybala? It's obvious, isn't it? You might want to not want to lose him, but it's nothing or 60 million now, isn't it? So that could be why it's happening. And you know what? I'm trying to get my head around all this, and I'm sure you are as well, because we've spent so long thinking Longstaff, Bruno Fernandes. Now we're thinking Eriksen again, and it is exhausting. But I tell you what, we've got Wan-Bissaka, Harry Maguire and Daniel James, and they're very good, 3 very good signings. We've got some good young players coming through, and if we can just provide a midfielder of the quality of a Bruno Fernandes or a Christian Eriksen or somebody like that, we're not winning the league next year anyway, but it gives us something to build on, and I think that is the most important thing over the next 48 hours. Maybe as simple as his family prefer London, says Murray, and that can be the case. That can be the case. I think that's why Newcastle have become irrelevant over the last few years, because why go to Newcastle? Because you can go and play for Fulham in London, and London is, perceived by a lot of people to be better than Newcastle, myself included, even though I've never been. Stano says he's excited by Eriksen. I think we just got to move our mindset. Right, now let me talk to you about Manchester United. Now this is why the United stand is so good. Because, as you know, I need to get a captainship to sync with Bruno Fernandes on Thursday. That's always been my stance. And stubbornness means I will go down with that ship. But the United stand won't go down with that ship. Mark Goldbridge will go down with that ship. Because the United stand is about looking at Glazers in and Glazers out. It's about looking at, we were in for Bruno, no we weren't. It's about, we will sign Eriksen and we won't sign Eriksen. It's about being even-handed. So it's hard for me to say this, but a lot of people have said, well, why don't you speak to the person who told you about Bruno Fernandes, which is why I was late tonight. And some of you may have read some of this stuff anyway, because it is sort of out there. The stance with Manchester United at the moment is this. The Bruno Fernandes stories that are coming from Portugal and from Italy are being fed by Bruno Fernandes' agent, who is trying to whip up a bidding war or interest in Bruno Fernandes. Manchester United's stance is that they like Bruno Fernandes, but they are not in for him as heavy as some people think they are. And there was even talk that Manchester United think that his price is overinflated. I disagree with that. I don't think £60 million for Bruno Fernandes is overinflated. I think João Felix went to Atletico Madrid for £100 million. He was playing in a stronger team, and Bruno Fernandes did better in the Sporting Lisbon team. Bruno Fernandes is an international for Portugal. I think £60 million is the right fee to play for Bruno Fernandes, but that's up to Manchester United. The second thing about Manchester United is that they are happy with the business they have done, but in the next 48 hours there is hope that they can get more business done. Not a certainty by any means, but there is a hope that they can get some business done in the next 48 hours. And I think Manchester United are very in tune with Manchester United fans in the case of the midfield. It's just whether they are going to competently deliver what was needed at the start of the summer, or we're going to come out of it like last summer where we didn't get two positions filled, or the summer before where we didn't get the winger in Perisic. That's the fear, I think, probably from the club, and it certainly is from us, that in the next 48 hours, will we get the player that we need? Players is probably a little bit optimistic. I think you've got to be saying one player now. Look, logically, evidentially, United surely are not going to sign more than one player in the next 48 hours. Some people think we won't sign any. So that is where it is with Manchester United at the moment. It doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to sign Bruno Fernandes, by the way. It just seems highly unlikely. I would say, as I said this evening on the previous stream, when you're looking at who United are going to sign now, I think logically and excitingly for some people, you and me, you've got to say it's probably looking like Eriksen. Whether that deal can be done, I think, really does depend on whether Spurs are willing to sell him to us to get money to do whatever they're going to do. So we'll see. How about how sluggish have Manchester United been in this transfer window, though, Mark? Do you think we have a shot at top four this season? Says Akshay Sood. We will assess this transfer window on Friday. We will assess the net spend on Friday. Well, although we won't probably know it on Friday. It's hard to judge this transfer window at the moment because we're emotionally involved in it. I don't make any apologies for some of the things I've said over the last few weeks. I think I had a decent chat with this person just before I came on air, and it gave me some clarity, and at a time where I'm exhausted. I am exhausted, and I don't want any sympathy from anybody from that, because I know you are as well. I'm absolutely exhausted. I'm exhausted with it, and we live this. I don't think some people understand it. You live this as a Manchester United fan or a Spurs fan or whatever. You live this emotion, and I said to somebody this afternoon that Manchester United season, for me, to answer that question, is it's dependent on what happens in the next 48 hours. I'm not crying. I've just got a bit of a blur across my eye because of the light. If we sign a midfielder of the quality of an Eriksen in the next 48 hours, I feel we've got something to build on. I feel we go into this season with a fighting chance because we've got a good back four. You add a midfielder. You've got to keep Pogba. I like that. We can work with that. If we do not buy a midfielder in the next 48 hours, I'm scared about what's going to happen this season. We've still got a very good back four. We've still got some good players above that. But that midfield, in my opinion, is ridiculously weak. So to me, the next 48 hours is what defines the next 9 months. Because if we get a midfielder in of quality, I think we've got a fighting chance next year. If we don't, I think we may well struggle. I can no longer keep up with all this transfer news now. Let's get a quality midfielder and try and get a top 4 spot, says Ramit Sandhu. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? I did actually tweet this out this afternoon. It's so hard to know what's going on with Manchester United because, I mean, there's a brand new bloody news outlet who opened up yesterday and they're clambering to be relevant. I mean, I saw one of their tweets today. And to be fair, he's obviously been briefed correctly because it's the same as similar to what I've been told and what somebody told me, and I've read it somewhere else as well. So there's obviously some correctness in that. But I just think people are just clambering around in these last 48 hours to be first, to be right. We've seen it through the summer. We saw Duncan Castles did it with Harry Maguire and Wan-Bissaka. He jumped 3, 4, sometimes a week, sometimes 2 weeks, and said it was a done deal before it actually happened. Ultimately, he was right. But he was jumping early. Why was he jumping early? Was he jumping early to try and be the king number 1 tier journalist of the summer? And I think that's what we're getting now in these final 48 hours. Everybody wants to be first. Everyone, I think with Eriksen, it could well happen or it could be a load of nonsense. But what you're getting is everybody wants to be the one who said, I said it first. I said it first. And we as the consumer... Because remember, we're a fan channel. Yeah, I might get told a little bit, and the transfer window is normally very enjoyable. But when the transfer window shuts, I actually am happy because when the season starts and the football starts, we ain't taking information second or third hand. We're watching the games, and that's our opinion. And no one can tell us any different. If we think Maguire's the best centre-back in the world, we think he's the best centre-back in the world because we've watched him. If we think somebody's terrible, we've watched him. But with transfers, you're always giving your opinion and you're having to gauge it off, are they credible? Is that right? Is that not right? And I think this last 48 hours, and probably the whole transfer window, to be honest, has been very murky and very hard to grasp what is going on. So in many ways, I'm glad it's going to come to an end. But in another way, I'm scared of it coming to another end because we need to get that midfielder over the line. Rich S. Mark, we're a shambles. You look at Spurs investing millions and millions, even with a new stadium, and there's United underinvesting. Top 3 gone and decided. Well, look, Spurs finished 4th last year, didn't they? But they got to Champions League final. They've brought Dembele in. If they were to bring in Lo Celso or Bruno and Dybala, adding to what they've got, they're a very good side. They're a very good side. So... But Arsenal could strengthen better than us. They've got Pepe. They're linked to Coutinho. They could get Kimpembe. They've got that lad on loan from Real Madrid. Man City and Liverpool are already strong. Chelsea can't be strong because they've got a transfer ban. So we got to get that deal done in the last 48 hours. 100%. 100%. Sid T. Mark, I don't see us making a deal with Spurs in 48 hours. Nothing more coming in midfield. We're going to be fighting for 5th with Chelsea. That is my fear if we don't do the business. Jermaine Decray says, this is how far we've fallen. A top-class player turns us down for Spurs while we get a player that Spurs no longer wants. So Jermaine is there pretty much picking up on the breaking news of the last half an hour. DiMarzio saying that Spurs have had a bid accepted for Dybala, and Dybala could well be off to Spurs. Earlier on, Fabrizio Romano, who works with DiMarzio, said that Dybala to Manchester United is definitely off. You interpret that, Dybala snubs Manchester United for Spurs. I mean, this is the world we live in at the moment. But it could lead to us getting Eriksen because Spurs will need to generate some cash, so we'll see. I can't believe it took 8 weeks to do a transfer that we knew how much it would cost from the start. P.S. You've got something on your lip, says Aaron Such. Yeah, for anybody who wants to know what's on my lip, it's like Bonjela because I've got a bit of a, what do you call it? Got an ulcer on my lip. So, yeah, it just means it doesn't hurt when I'm talking. Sean Turner says, I'm just listening to rants. He said he's close with Simon Peach and is 90% sure we will sign one player and possibly another. Thoughts? That was on the Flex and Rant show. If you haven't seen that earlier, Rants does get on very well with Simon Peach. Simon Peach is a tier 1 journalist. Simon Peach said to Flex on an interview in Perth that Manchester United really liked Bruno Fernandes and he was 50% chance he'd come to United, and that was 6 weeks ago. So there is no doubt Manchester United admire Bruno Fernandes, but where we are at the moment is that Manchester United don't want to pay for Bruno Fernandes. They believe he's overinflated price, and that's where we are. So for anybody who says that we weren't in for him, you're wrong. We just don't want to pay for him. That's the situation at the moment. To me, at the moment, and I can only try and swim through the amount of crap that's out there at the moment. I mean, Coutinho's been to Spurs, Arsenal, United, and back to Barcelona in the space of 3 hours. There's so much flying around there. It's ridiculous. But I don't think we can do 2 deals in 2 days. Mark, do you think Real Madrid will steal Eriksen's deal since Pogba isn't coming to Madrid, says Oren Galadi? Well, Real Madrid and Spurs have a very good relationship, and that's a possibility as well. Gerard, I mean, what I would say about the Eriksen deal is, I'll come back to that in a minute, remind me. Gerard Twomey says, Mark, I'm 33 years old and this is easily the most stressful window in all my years supporting United. My heart is set on Bruno over Eriksen. It is. You know, Gerard, I agree with you. I mean, I think, Peter Giles says, surely if we get Eriksen, it's an outstanding result. A proven first-class playmaker in the Premiership has to be a major boost for everyone at Manchester United. And Spartan, it is. If we get Eriksen, he's a good signing. And if we want Lukaku gone, what do you think of Brozovic plus money from Inter? Gets a midfielder in and he can play DM instead of Matic. Spartan N. Jones, I would do that now. Roxy, why Young was made captain when everyone knows there's no place for him on the pitch? Will he start any major matches? What are your thoughts on this, Mark? I mean, Ashley Young will start matches. He shouldn't do, but he will. Andrew Rossi, I like Dybala, but he would turn into another Di Maria. Doesn't really want to be here. Cheers to Wally for not falling into that trap. But why does he want? Why, if he goes to Spurs, why is he going to Spurs and not Manchester United? That's the thing. I mean, he can't be adamantly not wanting to come to United, but I'll go to Spurs. The difference between the two clubs is wafer thin in my mind. But going back to the Eriksen thing there, look, the thing about Eriksen is we've not been in for Eriksen all summer. Longstaff and Fernandes, in my opinion, were the 2 midfielders that United want, and for various reasons they haven't got them. This Eriksen deal has definitely materialised in the last week or 2. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what happens in transfer windows. These things can happen. But you've got to think about the general 3-month transfer window. Everybody knows United needed a centre-back, a right-back, 2 midfielders and a right winger going into the summer. I've said for a number of weeks, I don't think we're going to get the right winger. As we sat here now, we've got no midfielder. So what was the plan for virtually the last 3 months, because we've only got 2 months of it left. What's our plan been over the last 3 months with the midfield? Herrera was going ages ago. They knew Herrera was going in January. So what? And Fellaini went in January. So what's our plan been for the last 8 months or 6 months in relation to the midfield? Because whatever that plan was, it's gone up in smoke. And we'll never know why. But United knew they needed to bring midfielders in. And whether it was Longstaff and Fernandes and those deals have fallen apart for whatever reason, we are in this situation now where I think we're looking at Eriksen and trying to get a deal done very, very late on. So yeah, I agree with those people who say it's not gone to plan, and it hasn't gone to plan, and we'll never know why it's not gone to plan. But Eriksen was definitely not the priority going into the summer, because nobody knew the situation with Eriksen. I mean, there was rumours he wanted to go, but not really that he would come to Manchester United. I don't think Ollie thinks we are weak now. We got a squad fighting for the title maybe next year, says Brisen 1989. Can you send me a bottle of what you're drinking? And Nick P says there was a glint in Ed's eye when he spoke about the Schweinsteiger signing. He loves a big shiny shirt selling name. Let's see what happens. And Zakari Lewis says, Mark, if Dortmund falls out of the Champions League early and is in the Europa League trouble, would they listen to January Sancho bids? I don't know, mate. I don't know. I mean, just going back to that point about Eriksen and whether he might go to Real Madrid. I think that the Eriksen deal, whether it's going to happen or not, I think United are saying, what we're hearing is that they want to do some business in the next 48 hours. They're hopeful, but it might not happen. To me, I interpret that they're not. They want to get a player in, but they're not confident they can get that player. And if we say it's Eriksen, then maybe the fear is legitimately dealing with Daniel Levy, or legitimately Real Madrid might come in. Because let's not forget, the problem is, if United want Christian Eriksen and Real Madrid want Paul Pogba, but United make it clear they're not selling Pogba, Real Madrid can say to Spurs, we'll sign Eriksen, take your time on what you're doing, we'll speak to you at the weekend because our transfer window doesn't close till the end of August. United have to do the Eriksen deal on Thursday. Real Madrid can wait 3 or 4 weeks and say to Spurs, don't worry about it, we'll sort a deal out. So this is the thing, isn't it? This is the handicap of having the transfer window closed so soon for us. But having said that, there's no excuse because we've had however many months to know that we needed to bring a midfielder in. Kevin Chiklangu says, personally, I think Bruno would fit us like a glove, but I'm not convinced Eriksen is the right midfielder for us. But I guess it's better than nothing. Look, I haven't watched... I know Eriksen. You know Eriksen. We all know Eriksen. He's a well-known, very, very good midfielder, Premier League proven. I was a little bit worried because I was hearing that he had a bad season last year. So I actually put a tweet out and I said, any Spurs fans, what's your opinion on Eriksen? Because I've heard a couple of people say he's going to be like Alexis Sanchez. He'll leave and he's on the decline. In fairness, most of them said he's crap at corners. He can't beat the first man, which surprised me. But he's a match winner. He runs round more than Herrera. He's tenacious. And he just feels like in the last season at Spurs, his head was turned. So, you know, most Spurs fans could be salty about it, but most Spurs fans are saying no, he's a very good player. He just wasn't on his game last season as much as he could have been. The only negative that was consistent is that he can't put a cross in. But welcome to we need someone who can put a cross in. Let Spurs get Dybala. Eriksen can go to Madrid. We keep Pogba, get Bruno and Bale on loan, add in Staffy, and we are in the top race. Josh Waring says that. I mean, the only interesting thing there is, if we get Eriksen, right, and Spurs get Dybala, are they still going to sign Bruno as well? Because Spurs' net spend then is going to be well over 120, 130 million. I mean, what a summer that would be for Spurs. Ndombele, Bruno Fernandes and Dybala. That's basically what we should have done. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, the other thing I would say as well, Brisen1989 says, you misunderstood. I think Ollie thinks this squad, which is young and fast, will develop this year to fight for the title next year. It's Jaeger cheers. I don't think that this United team at the moment, even if it develops this year, will be fighting for a title next year. It needs midfielders. You know, I mean, Pogba's gone in a year anyway, so this midfield needs midfielders. I don't think we'll win the title in the next 3 years if we don't start to build the midfield from this summer, because I think it will take 2 or 3 years. How are Spurs going to pay Dybala's wage demands, says Sander Erger? Yeah, I know, it's weird. I'm not convinced he will go to Spurs. I'm really not. Toxic Hug says, but it's coming from Dimarzio, so what happened to Hannibal Mebra? Swear that was closed 3 days ago and just suddenly went dead. Also, if we do get Eriksen, how do you think that would impact our seasons? Well, I've already said, mate, I think if we get Eriksen, we've got a fighting chance for third. If we don't get Eriksen, I think we'll be fighting for 5th and 6th. I think the next 48 hours defines our season, and that's quite scary, isn't it? Stein Massey says, you waste 200 on Pogba and Lukaku, but won't spend 60 on Fernandes, who's light years ahead. And the veteran trainer 88, is there any chance of Savic, or is that sailed? Milinkovic-Savic has been quiet for well over a week. So, in fact, I think the last mention of Milinkovic-Savic was before I went on holiday, because I even had some thumbnails ready to use if I had to use them, and they never got used. So Milinkovic-Savic is totally off the record. You know, we're not going to do anything with him at all. We're not going to do anything at all with him. The Batman channel says that Dimarzio is full of bullshit. Well, he might well be. We'll find out, won't we? The harsh Dimarzio said Bruno is 1 step away, says Mornish Barno. Yeah, he did. Fabrizio Romano said in May that Bruno Fernandes was going to Man City. Benjamin Kaiser says, do you think we could see Axel Twansibi playing as a CDM? Let him eat up balls like a hungry hippo in the midfield. He can play that position. I think Mourinho played him in that position, didn't he, a couple of times, a couple of years ago. So he can play that position. Mandy Smith says we're going to buy Milinkovic-Savic. I mean, look, if we did do, it would be completely left field. But you know what? We this transfer window, if it's nothing, it's consistent in the way that we shift from positivity to negativity. Please do smash a like on the video, everybody. I think this has been an absolute. I wouldn't even call it's been right.